one is getting the students to buy them. So I asked the students for each class to buy 2 graded readers. And at the end of the class, I asked the students very nicely if they would consider donating the readers to my class. And actually that's something else. In my first class, only 30% of the students donated their readers. But I've improved my message, and the last class I got 80%. So, you know, I think working on that is another source of readers. Another thing is practicalities. Where are you going to keep the books? How are you going to move the books around? I have this cart, but unfortunately it's not designed to go outside. So it's only got 3 wheels now. So I think I'm due for a new cart. But these very practical things have a big impact on whether your program will continue. Right? If you can't get the books to the students and so on. One thing I think is really important is it's almost essential, in my opinion, to give the books to the students, to make sure the students physically get the books. If I tell the students, hey, the books are in the library, go and borrow some, there's a very low uptake rate. If I take books to the class and say, here's some books, read them, then everybody reads. So I think that's one very important factor, making it easy for the students to read. If they have to go somewhere else and do something to get a book, most of them, or many of them, are not going to do that. So you have to make it impossible not to do it. And the final thing is grading, which is also important because the institution expects grades, and I think a well-structured grading system, again, tells the students that what they're doing is important. I think it was Takase-sensei mentioned that, you know, the reading often gets knocked down to the bottom of the to-do list. And the stuff that gets done is homework that has to be handed in, or, you know, a sports meeting they have to go to. So you just have to move the graded reading into that list by giving it grades, by making students accountable for what they do. And this is all the stuff that you're doing as you teach. Once you have a good program, we can move to phase 2 here, which is expanding the program. And this is in 2 parts, again, in my model. So I guess it's the DEEL model. This is when you take your successful class and you take it wider. So you go from 1 class to 5 classes or 6 classes, which is what I'm doing at the moment. I had 1 reading class last semester. I have 7 next semester. It's going to be a big change for me. I can see lots of problems coming up. Mainly in 2 areas. One is going to be consistency. Can I keep the class consistent with different groups of students? So my law students have done very well with reading. Maybe they have more of a reading kind of humanities background. But with engineering students, will I have the same success? Will I need some new materials for them? Maybe more science-based or more non-fiction type materials. So all these kind of problems I can see coming up with the consistency element of it. With stronger and weaker classes, how is the grading going to work? Am I going to have a single standard for all the students, or is each class going to have its own standard? So these are questions I'm going to have to deal with next year. The other thing is simply books, resources. With 7 times the number of students, I'm going to need probably at least 5 times the number of books. And that's going to be quite a big problem that I'm not looking forward to. I'm probably going to have to limit student book borrowing quite a lot. Last year I said, take as many books as you want, take 10, take 15. This year I'll be like, you can have 1. And you better bring it back next week. This is the easy part of expanding, because again, it's all yours. The second part is when you expand to other teachers. And I'm also going to start doing that the next semester. So I've got meetings scheduled with a couple of colleagues who've expressed an interest in ER. I'm going to sit down with them, explain my program, explain how they can implement it in their own classes, and hopefully do that. The problem here is getting on the same page in terms of methods and theories kind of thing, making sure that their idea of extensive reading is the same as mine, and that we can apply it in the same way. The other problem is grading, again. Can we standardize grading not just across classes, but across teachers? is my grading system robust enough to have my colleagues follow it? Possibly not to begin with, but eventually we'll have to come together on that. And again, resources. If I lend my books to my colleagues, I'm going to have even less in my own classes. So that's again a problem. I have to get them to start buying books, and so on. The last part, though, probably the most important part, is leveraging the program. So taking it beyond individual teachers. And this is probably the hardest part. I don't see so many of these big programs around. I see lots of teachers doing extensive reading on their own. I see groups of teachers doing extensive reading, but these huge, like Tom has, kind of university-wide or school-wide programs, I think are not as common as they should be, perhaps. So this last bit, hopefully you can give some comments later on if you're part of a program like this, as to the challenges of getting it up this far. But for here, I think probably the biggest problem is going to be documentation. Creating manuals, creating standardized introduction kind of packs, getting the student introductions right, so that you can do the same program with all the students in your school, all the students in your university. See this taking a lot of time to get right. Ideally, I can see a website where students would go to sign up, where they'd go to have a briefing. There'd be videos of teachers talking, of students talking about the program. But I think that's probably the key, having documentation, because that really does take individual teachers as the system. If your documentation is good enough, then the system can be self-sustaining, I think. A second, very close second to that, is getting the administration on board. So persuading the administration of your institution to pay for this and to give it the attention it deserves. I would like to see, within 5 years or so at my university, a reading course that is not taught but does have credits. So the students get credits for doing this reading program. And I think if there's no credits involved, then it's not important. The university has decided it's not important. So I think just to make sure that my students are really intelligent. They're clever, they're motivated, they're very successful students. So if they look at a course and they say, okay, I don't get anything for putting time into this, they're not going to. All my law students attended, like the law faculty is particularly bad for this, but this last semester all my law students attended exactly 70% of the classes and then stopped coming because they'd fulfilled their attendance requirement. So I mean, I can understand in a way if you're very busy and you prioritize, right? But that's exactly what's going to happen if your program doesn't have kind of the official recognition. Finally, I think the problem with leveraging a program is, again, the tracking system. My current tracking system is I have the students fill out a record of what they've read, how many words, which books, how many words, and so on. And I also have them write a very short weekly reading report. Very, very short. Now that's fine for my class. I can sit in class and check them as the students read. It actually works very, very well. But if we implement that across the board, and all 6,000 undergraduates are doing this system, I don't want to sit down and check the reports every week. So we need some way of tracking things here. And there's a couple of online solutions that seem very, very promising at the moment. That's probably the way to go. Unfortunately, I think it would probably be optimal to have those online solutions integrated into the university website so that there's no slipping through the cracks. But I think they're pretty much there already. I'm hoping to start using one, start using the Moodle Reader program from next year. And that will probably be part of the next version of this talk, how that went, implementing an electronic solution as opposed to the pen and paper.